So what we're going to cover is why reducing food waste is important in schools, bringing the school community on the journey, pupils, staff and parents, how to reduce food waste throughout the school day, tips to reducing food waste in food and nutrition lessons, some links to some resources and sources of further information. And I've put that twice. So you're going to get lots of links and sources of information.
Great, thank you. Thanks for that, Francis. So, my name's Jason O'Rourke. I'm head teacher of Washington Academy, which is a primary academy in Lincolnshire. My background is that I've done food education has been at the heart of what we do at our school for a long time. In its many manifestations, we've got a 300-metre square kitchen garden. We've got polytunnels. We've got hives, apiary. We've got a heritage orchard, and we ingrain food education throughout the curriculum as well. And it has such a powerful impact. You all know that because you're food educationists. That's why you're on this webinar. So you know the impact it can have. And you also know that it needs to come from the top as well. It needs to come from leadership that give people permission to do it because it is so important, so important. So I've been doing this for a number of years. My doctorate that I finished last year was in food education and school leadership. So thinking of why other heads do it as well. And I think if I did it now, and ask those same head teachers who are all Food for Life Gold head teachers why they do it, I do think that climate change and sustainability will play a bigger part than it did when I interviewed them 3 years ago, because it is a very big subject and it's something that children are really engaged with. I've been fortunate enough to spend quite a bit of time with Scandinavian schools, Finland, Denmark and Norway, and they understand the impact of sustainability because they see it very starkly in their countries, and they are well ahead of us, again Finland, on incorporating it into their curriculum and getting the children really aware of the issues that will face them as they get older. And what I find that quite exciting, to be honest with you, because I think food education, as you all know, has played quite a low part in the national curriculum and in the government's thinking on education. We've had the National Food Strategy being released, which was a wasted opportunity in my mind. They didn't put as much emphasis on it as they could have done. But what I see as this area of sustainability is that it can be the Trojan horse that we bring food education into the curriculum on, because there's a lot of interest in climate change, obviously, and the impact that our choices as human beings have on the world and how we can change our habits and make a big difference. And where best to do it than with the next generation with schools and children who really engage with this. We've been doing this for a couple of years now, and we've had some fantastic projects to run with, Erasmus projects we've worked in. So it's a really important area, and I think we can make a significant difference if we include this as part of our teaching and learning curriculum. So how do we bring our school community on the journey with the pupils, the staff, and of course our wider school community as well, our parents and the communities that we serve? This is our year of food education at Washington, and you can see here that we put food waste reduction very early on in their learning, okay, in the first big term. We do a lot. You can see there's something there called taste ed. I'll come on to that later on because I think that's important about the pedagogical aspect of food waste. But we make sure that the children are very aware of this within the context of food education, but also in the wider context of what they do at home, what they're thinking about, and how we incorporate it into other themes within the school year. And that's our first year, that's cycle A, and we also include it again in cycle B. So it's not one thing that we do just for 1 year and forget about it. We layer it and we build it up, and we add more nuances to it as the children get older and are more kind of perceptive of things and can change more of their habits and their friends and their families as well. The children's voice, obviously a really big thing, and it never ceases to surprise me how vocal the children are about this and the ideas they come at it. They come at it from a completely different viewpoint than we do. We kind of have all these things in our heads as adults, all these other things going on, and they sometimes can cut really clear into it. We've got a number of groups, which is great because it means there's a lot of children are impacting on the choices made in the school. We have our school parliament, which is a separate one. This group here is our SNAG group. So it's our group on food education. You can see there that our chef is involved in that group. Our lead, which is an LSA on the food education, is involved in that group. I'm involved in that group, and also our school gardener is involved in that group. And the children here make decisions and make choices that have been led from their classes about what changes we can make. And a lot of that's to do with what we serve in our school lunch hall. They kind of get feedback from the children about how we can change that, how we can adapt it so that there isn't as much food waste in the lunch hall. And it's really, really perceptive. They see things because, of course, they're our customers, you know, our food customers. So they come up with some fantastic ideas. So we've got that group that runs that, but we've also got a group called the Guardians of the Earth. And this came out of an Erasmus project we're in at the moment called Learn for Earth, which is linked up with Aalborg University in Denmark and also the Institute of Gastronomy in Turin. And it's all about food waste and how to tackle it with children. And so our Guardians of the Earth are a separate group that are really, really proactive. They've done assemblies, and I'll show you a bit of the work they've done on assemblies, and decided on the focus that they want to settle on and work with for a number of terms based on what they already know about the food waste that goes on in the school. So this is just a part of one of the assemblies they did gave to the children. And their top priority, this was all about kind of climate change and sustainability, but their top priority was lunchtimes, and both the waste in the kitchen and in the bins. Okay, and they've done some other things with rainwater and getting rid of litter. But they have regular meetings once every 2 weeks to build upon what they've already discovered, what they're already putting forward, and what they want to implement within the school. So as I said, it's part of this Learn for Earth with these countries here. What they first tasked the chef to do is collect all of the vegetable waste. So this was a practical thing, and it's great ownership for the children, and they're great champions of it because they're running this. They went into chef, they arranged a meeting with them and said, look, can you please just collect all the food waste that you have at the end? And we're talking about vegetable waste there. And as you can see there, it was potato peelings. And then we put it back to the Institute of Gastronomy and said, can you do some work with potato peelings? How can we work with that and make sure that the children, we can recycle that into different products? And we also looked at potato skins. Okay, so we have a baked potato option as one of the options for school lunches. Quite a few children have it because parents don't want them to have a big meal at lunchtime and a big meal in the evening. But they were only eating the fluffy insides of potato skins and throwing away the jacket potato is probably a familiar thing to a lot of the people here that get that. And they wanted to say, let's get excited about potatoes. Why not? So they wanted to do a project on what we could do with the potatoes. And they did our whole assembly. I supported them with the assembly and then backed it up with some of the things. We're planting different types of potatoes, purple potatoes, different varieties of potatoes to get the children more excited about it. But I don't know, you're ever surprised, but children really listen to what you say. And they are now, especially Key Stage 1, attempting to eat their potatoes and finishing them. And it's just one of those things, just a tiny little thing, being led by children, which the other children really engage with, being supported by the school and the school leadership, and it has made a massive impact. So looking at the children being the champions of this and a long-term aim for this. We also, I wanted to mention about, and I know a lot of schools won't be blessed with the kind of grounds that we have, but growing your own produce is a big way of reducing school food waste because the children have an investment in it. And we've been doing this for a number of years, and the old adage of the little red hen story, if they have planted that seed, they've chosen the seeds to take, if they've planted it, if they've weeded it and nurtured it and watered it and then harvested it, they will then want to try that. Okay, so you're not then putting something alien on the school pass that they have not seen before or seen in its natural environment. You know, it's that case of actually harvesting it and taking it to chef as well. And so they're more inquisitive about the food that is there and know what's happening to it as well. So there's a buy-in there. It's not, as we looked at a previous slide there, it's not just from a plastic that children see in supermarkets and have a limited, as we know with the facts and figures, a limited palate. These children are getting excited about it, seeing what goes with it, and also making suggestions about what they want to do with it as well. So that has a massive impact on it. And as you see, you know, that from school plot to school lunch plate, they can see that process it goes through, and are more engaged in trying that food. And I'll cover that a little bit later on about that pedagogical aspect of it as well, incorporating that into the teaching and learning, because that's important, really important. It has a big impact on food waste and children's lightening and widening their palates. Of course, there's the enjoyment. We forget to say that about food, don't we? You know, we go all about nutrition and diet and calories in and calories out. We forget about the pleasure that can come with food as well. And children picking their own food is and then taking it up to the school lunch or using it in the classroom is a great thing. It's a really good thing. A lot of the food that we do grow and we can't include in the school lunches because we get a plethora or a glut of it, we do end up preserving. So we've used these are sun-dried tomatoes, or oven-dried tomatoes from the polytunnel. That's a fruit leather that we use with our apples from the orchard. Very, very simple to make. And we use that, no refined sugars in there, all natural. And that's used in our after-school club and part of our lunch offering as well. And we also make jams, and there's crabapple jelly there from the crabapple trees we have in the grounds, and green tomato chutney for the ones that don't ripen. And that again is used all year round within the lunches as well. So just widening the children's experience of food. And I think preserving, a great thing to talk to children about, because it's one of those lost arts. We did a lot of it in this country pre-1940, and then when with the mass production of food and the ease of how we get food, we lost this art, and it's a fantastic one. You know, we had our Polish community come in and asked them to come in and help us with these cucumbers here and preserve these cucumbers, and they were hoop about it, coming in and helping and valuing, you know, that cultural aspect of it as well. So it's a great way of bringing parents in, getting them engaged, and tapping into their skills as well. So how do we also reduce it throughout the school day? I think a lot of it, again, comes down to planning and challenging your school meals provider, if you don't have your own chef, as we do, to ensure that the numbers are right and that school is getting not only high quality food, but also value for money, and being aware of the environmental impact of school lunches and food waste. We put a price on the food that we grow, and it's a farmer's market price as well, to see and to prove to governors and anyone else asks how much we are saving financially wise by growing the food ourselves. So the kind of facts and figures that we get our year fives and our year sixes to work with, so that they can see how much food is worth in a monetary sense, not just the pleasurable sense and the fact that, you know, the climate sense, but also the financial sense as well, bringing that element to it as well. Things like we had, you know, our policy post-COVID is that all children in Key Stage 1 with UIFSM have a hot school meal. And I thought I was going to have a real battle on my hands with that, but it didn't have any kickback from it. I've been putting it off for years, but it went down very well. Key Stage 2 are different matter because, of course, they have to pay for it. So we offer this thing called Ready to Rumble, which is a packed lunch, a healthy packed lunch offer. And we've seen a reduction in the amount of food that is being thrown away at lunchtimes as well because of this. They have an option to take, I think, 4 items from that pass there. Any food waste from someone who has a packed lunch who doesn't take Ready to Rumble or the hot school meals, they take home themselves. We're not getting rid of their food waste. We're not getting rid of the plastics. We're not getting rid of the food that they're not eating. I want parents to see the food that they're not eating so they can adjust it themselves. So they're not allowed to use our waste facilities if they have their own packed lunch. But this packed lunch offer that we do has reduced visually and anecdotally the food waste that goes with packed lunch offers. And also our kind of food waste cycle. This is something that I'll come on to a little bit more details. You know, as I talked about the plot that we have, the kitchen garden that we have, the individual beds that we have for each classes, children harvesting that, eating that, and then we separate that waste, and that took it's taken a bit of time for the children to get used to that, but again, assemblies and awareness of that for the children, and into the compost, and then back onto the kitchen garden. So we bought one of these trolleys and then marked it up ourselves, so the children are aware of what raw food is, what cooked food is, and cups there as well. But that was an assembly led by me, saying, right, let's take these various items that you will be familiar with in the school lunch hall. Which one would we put them in? Which bucket would we put them in? And the raw food obviously goes back onto into the compost bins, and the cooked food we then weigh every day, and that then helps the snag committee to decide to find out which of the lunches are getting more waste or more thrown away than others, so we can adapt it, and chef can adapt it as well. So we're trying to all the time move with it and adapt to it to make sure that we're bringing that waste down. And the shock when there is a lot, and then the children going round, and you have to come to me and say, "Oh, it's really a lot." So we'll go around and tell the children this, so that they're aware of it. So there's always that kind of constant communication that's going on about it. And that collecting for our compostable waste, okay, the children are part of that as well. They can see that of course there is going to be waste. We want to reduce it, but there will be the waste. But what do we do with that? How can we make that a learning experience? We also have a wormery as well, which brings a lot of joy and pleasure to the children, especially the juice that comes out of that. So they can see that, although this stuff comes from the kitchen as well, so the chef has a separate area in the kitchen that he puts the green waste that he's cutting up, that he doesn't use the peelings and some of the outer leaves, some of the vegetables, and that's then taken down to our compostable and our wormery as well. And this extends also to staff, making staff aware, so they're all aware of. It's a whole buy-in, it's a whole school approach to this, not just the children doing this. So this is the staff room, all the coffee grinds are collected, all fruits collected, and we've got compost bins within each class, so it's easily accessible to the children. They don't have to walk around and put it in a separate bin. It's there, and then that's collected and taken down. So it's you're trying to break down all the barriers that will stop this happening. As I said, this idea of incorporating it into the learning curriculum, we use a program called Tasted, which we'll declare that I helped set up. It's a charity based on sensory food education, because I really believe that if you want to change the habits of children that have been ingrained, let's get it in the classrooms. Teachers have such an impact on children's choices, and peers do as well. If a child sees another child eating a plum and they've never eaten one before, they're more inclined to do it if their friend's doing it than maybe sitting at home where the parents and that emotional attachment they've got. So Tasted is a program that we've used, the most effective thing we use in school, and it's making children aware of different types of fruits and vegetables, which of course will then lead to a reduction in food waste. If you're trying to put on your school lunches really healthy food, and then are distraught when they don't try it, well, they haven't experienced that before. They might not have seen that at home, but they will get that in the classroom with their parent, with the teachers, and be more familiar with it. So when they actually see it in the school lunch hall, they then know what it is, have tried it, have experienced it with all of their senses, more inclined to eat it. And we've seen that time and time again. So it's about using our 5 senses. We started with our very youngest children, Key Stage 1 and FS. And it is absolutely superb. They really do enjoy it, and as do the teachers as well. Simple hands-on lessons. Got over 100 resources for teachers to use in nurseries and primary schools. I haven't actually got the link up here, but it's just been adopted by the DFE as a case study for EYFS curriculum, the Development Matters curriculum as well. And it's learning by doing. It's, there's no pressure. The two rules are no one has to try, no one has to like, but children do try it, and 9 times out of 10 they do like it. If they don't like it, that's no problem at all. Well, everybody has some things that they don't like, and you need to accept that. Learning the new skills, and they're, as I said, encouraged to express their likes and dislikes, and then create the vocabulary for it as well. So it helps children to love eating fruit and vegetables. That's not just me saying anecdotally. Research has come across and said that as well, with the SAPRA method that it is based on. Gives children the opportunity to explore a wider variety of foods, and of course then there will be less food waste, because chefs or whatever you are preparing is not then going to be left and children aren't going to taste it, because they've already had that experience within the classroom, within their teaching and learning curriculum. Lots of lessons there for all areas of the primary school, and it goes through the kind of 5 senses of there, and there are lots and lots of resources, over 100 lessons there, all the lesson plans there, and also PowerPoints, so that people who are less familiar with it, and teachers, let's be honest, some teachers, primary school teachers, are not so familiar with different types of food, that gives them that exposure to it as well. And looking at the wider community, this kind of aspect of sharing this work that we're doing about food waste is really important to talk to the wider community about that. We have a thing called the Snack Shack, and we do a lot of recipes based on food that you'd probably not you normally throw away, like the outer leaves of cauliflowers, or the potato skins, and use the potato skins, but sending those recipes home as well, so children get excited about it and then take that excitement home to their parents as well. And it enables the community to become a lot more involved in the life of the school, and positive impact on the children, and developing that school connectedness as well, which is what we've been missing for the last 2.5 years, really. So lots of things to kind of mull over there, about not just the aspect of looking at the school kitchen and the lunchtime offer that we are. I think that is food waste. It's trying to think, how can we impact that within the actual classroom, and teach the children not just about the climate change, but about that idea of pleasure as well. I think is a key aspect. Okay, thank you.
Just thinking about food nutrition lessons, and actually thinking about the sort of the theory and applying theory in your lessons. And one of the things that we think is really important to teach pupils is very much about sort of meal planning. And it may be something that their parents or carers do at home, but it's a really good thing to start teaching them to understand about how planning the meals for a week can reduce food waste. Writing shopping lists, actually thinking about what you're going to buy before you go to the shops. Now, I'm actually very guilty myself about not always having a shopping list, but I do know the value of it. Checking what's in the cupboard, the fridge and the freezer, to make sure that actually you're not buying things that you've got already and that's going to go to waste. Teaching pupils about batch cooking and how useful that can be, and actually making something in advance, large batches, putting it in the fridge or the freezer, and bringing it out when you need it. Using leftovers. Now, I've got a big hazard sign next to that, because obviously we've got to think about the food safety aspect of using leftovers, and just to make sure that the pupils are always made aware that something should only be ever reheated once, and after that it should be thrown away, and obviously it needs to be stored correctly before you actually come to eat it. We've also got some resources actually on the website that you might find useful to use with the classes that you've got. And these are around an activity about leftovers. And the pupils get given cards and a list of store card items, and some items that might be in season. And then they just need to choose from these resources what they might make. So 1 seasonal ingredient, 4 leftover ingredients, and any item from the store cupboard card. And it's all very random, and they need to just have a think about what could be interesting and useful and tasty to make. Knowing their dates is also very important, and this is used by and best before dates, and making sure that they're following those where appropriate. Portion control is another really important thing to teach pupils. to make sure that not too much food is cooked and therefore then wasted. And we've got some good information and resources on nutrition.org.uk around getting portion wise. And it actually sort of explains the size of portions. It's based on adults, but it will give pupils an idea. And it's also got these lovely handy measures in. So how much you can work out as a portion by using a whole hand or a fist or something like that. And then also temperature control of fridge and freezer, and making sure that the pupils understand that keeping the fridge at the right temperature will obviously slow down the deterioration of the food, and therefore the food will last longer. And interestingly, the average temperature of fridges around the UK is actually 7 degrees, and as we all know, it should be below 5 degrees centigrade. I've put a link on here as well to our pupils with additional needs resources, because we have got some really nice resources on there around planning what to cook, writing shopping lists, using ingredients that you've got in the cupboard, thinking about the different steps that need to be put into place before you actually go and buy the food and then bring it back and cook it. So just thinking about sort of some of the practicalities in your lessons as well. So what I did was we put a question on Twitter and got teachers to come back with some top tips for us, and also on the Food Teachers Centre Facebook group. So some of these are ones that I've got from my experience or that we've gathered from other areas, and some are from what teachers have told us. So a lot of the teachers I know now reduce recipe sizes, so just 1 or 2 portions, and that again can reduce the amount of food that's needed and therefore the waste. Task pupils to work in groups or pairs, and that again reduces the ingredients needed, so you're not getting them to make a meal for 4 that might then not get taken home or get eaten. So actually getting them to work in pairs, reducing ingredients, reducing the cost, and then if you've got time, actually getting them to share the food together once they've made it. And then something else one of the teachers suggested was adapting recipes depending what you have in stock. Now, this would obviously depend on whether you're providing ingredients for the pupils, but the suggestion was that if you're making a summer salad, that if you had pasta, rice and couscous, for example, left over in stock, then you got the pupils to make a salad using a different type of ingredient. So you actually get those to be used up within a lesson. So they don't have to use the same ingredients as a class. The next one actually also considers whether you buy ingredients in for the pupils or whether they bring them in. But if you buy the ingredients for the pupils and get them ready and give them to them, think about buying in bulk. I know a number of schools use organisations to help with that, or they do it through the school canteen. And order on a weekly basis rather than you having to go shopping every day. And you then got an idea about the ingredients that you might need for those lessons for the week. Jason was talking about collecting food waste and using it. So try and do that where you can. I know not all schools have a facility for food waste to be collected by their local authority. I didn't when I was teaching, but it might be that if you've got a garden at school that you can use the food waste for composting. We had one teacher say that she used to take her food waste, her fruit and vegetables home to feed her pet sheep. So if you've got a pet sheep, you can do that. But it's useful to be able to use around the school for gardening if you can. And also the other thing is that I used to certainly find that if I was using a small amount of herbs and spices in a recipe, I'd have a pupil bringing in a whole jar. We might need a teaspoon, and then they say, oh, I can't be bothered to take that home. And often they just put it in the bin. So if you can, think about in the recipes the kind of things that you could provide that would save that food waste. So herbs, spices, vinegar, yeast sachets, oil for pupils to use, that kind of thing. And then also thinking if you've got any leftover fresh herbs, they're great to be frozen in an ice cube tray with a little bit of olive oil or water, and then they can be taken out of the freezer as and when you need them, and then just pop directly into the dishes that are being made. The same thing with ginger. So you can freeze fresh ginger, and then actually you can just grate it into the dish as you're cooking it. The other thing you could think about is dicing onions and garlic in bulk and then freezing them, because what we always say is that you don't need to see pupils doing the skills, the practical skills for every lesson. Perhaps it's not something that's going to be your lesson intent to actually see them preparing an onion, for example. Maybe you've shown that to them before, they're confident in doing that. So you don't need to do that each time. So if you've got some frozen onions in the freezer, you can use those. That's perfect. And then also thinking about using the whole of the herb or the spring onion in recipes. I used to be very guilty of just picking off the leaves of herbs, but actually you can use the whole thing. Use the stalk and the leaves, particularly if it's a dish that's going to be cooked or blitzed maybe. And things like using the whole of the spring onion. Again, I used to be very guilty of just using the white of the spring onion, but actually all of the green can be used as well. And we've got a lovely recipe online for a Polish cheese dip that actually does use that. It uses the greens of the spring onion. And there's some more suggestions. So again, Jason was talking about potato peelings. And so what you can do is you can ditch the peeler. As long as fruit and vegetables are washed, you don't need to peel them. And if you do peel them though, do save the skins, because you can actually make potato skin crisps, and there's a very easy recipe on the screen for how to do that. But also you can keep them in the fridge in a bag with other peelings and make a stock, or you can put them in the freezer to make a stock with as well. And also if you've got any leftover herbs or vegetables, make a pesto. So lots of people think about just traditional basil, but you can make a pesto with almost anything really. So parsley, coriander, mint, sage, tarragon, or leafy greens, so spinach, kale, or watercress. Watercress makes a fantastic, lovely peppery pesto. Again, Jason was talking about preserving. So you can do some preserving with the pupils. So make jams, pickles, or kimchi. And there's a recipe for a quick pickled cauliflower and cabbage on the screen too. Another suggestion a teacher made was about dehydrating fruit and vegetables. You can do that in an oven at a very low temperature, but actually you can buy dehydrators which are fairly reasonable now, and you can just slice up the fruit or the vegetable and put it in the dehydrator to dry out. And the teacher said that they did that with some fruit, and then they used that for canapes for an end of year event. You can also cut your vegetables and store in water to extend the shelf life. Just keep them in water for a few days. And then also you can regrow your veg, and there's some lovely resources online and some wonderful pictures that you can have a look at about regrowing veg and just putting it in a little bit of water on a windowsill, and then it will begin to sprout again. Some of the recipes, we're talking about reducing the quantities that you might be making, and we've done that recently with our recipes on Food Facts of Life, and they may not need a lot of the coconut milk, so you may only use a quarter of the can or a little bit of passata, and actually you can freeze these things. So put them into ice cube trays, and then you can then just pop them out and use them when you need to. The same with egg yolks and egg whites. And then being creative with leftovers. And I think this is a really good thing, as I was saying earlier about teaching the pupils how to think about using their leftovers. And if you've got some chickpeas left over from making a dish, you could make lovely roasted chickpeas. And we've got a recipe on nutrition.org.uk from Healthy Eating Week, which is about roasted chickpeas. And that can be done in the oven, or it can be done in an air fryer if you have one of those. Asparagus end soup. I went into our local greengrocers the other day, and they were cutting the ends off the asparagus, and they were just going to throw them away. And I said, don't do that, let me have them, I'm going to make some soup. It's a bit of an effort because you've got to put it through a sieve at the end because it's quite woody, but absolutely delicious. Or bean pod fritters. Now this is something I haven't tried, but it does look a great recipe. So broad beans coming into season at the moment, a lot of wastage with those. What you can do with the pods, you can just egg and flour them and spray them with a little bit of oil, put them in a hot oven, and then you get these lovely crunchy bean pod fritters. Thinking about different ingredients you can use to reduce food waste, and canned food is absolutely brilliant for that because it's very controlled, a bit like frozen food. And I put a link on here to the Canned Food UK website, I think it is. They've got a Facebook group as well, and they've got some lovely recipes on there that you might want to think about looking at. Using the liquid from chickpeas to make aquafaba meringues. I've never been successful with that, but I know you can do it. Try a boff pie. I love the sound of this. So this is looking in your fridge at school or perhaps at home, or getting the pupils to do it and think about what's in the fridge and what could be used to make a pie. So a boff pie would be any vegetables, any meat, anything like that. Make a tomato sauce or a white sauce, a little bit of potato or pastry on the top, pop it in the oven. Lovely. Make breadcrumbs and freeze them, use them for goujons, fish cakes or nuggets. One of the teachers suggested having an ingredient amnesty box, and that was to any ingredients that the pupils weren't going to take home, they can go in there and they can be used for other lessons. And then also for you, check your school fridge temperature as well. And one of the images on there that you can see, the tacos, that is actually a banana blossom taco, and very interesting. Have a look out for banana blossom and try something like that with canned food. Quick thing about sources of information, there's a lot out there about food waste, and we've got some links here on here, and particularly from our point of view, Healthy Eating Week, we've got some resources on there and also some recipes which have identified little aspects to do with food waste and how you can implement that with the recipes. There's a really good fact sheet on the Institute of Food Science and Technology website, which is looking about food waste and about fridge management, which is very useful. I've put the RHS campaign for school gardening because Jason was talking about gardening and how getting pupils thinking about the food they grow and actually being invested in it. So if you can do that. And then this other one, this Western Riverside Waste Authority, I just came across this, but it's really useful. It's a London authority. And they had a food waste calculator, a plate waste survey, and then information about engaging pupils and improving their dining experience. So that could be useful to have a look at. And of course, there's the WRAP website. And then there's another charity called UK Harvest, which is a food rescue charity. And they've got some nice education resources around food waste. So one thing, first of all, and it's a word that I absolutely love, Jason, and I wonder if you could explain it to other people, because I needed to look it up myself, but this commensality, could you explain what that means?
Yeah, it's a great word.
Yes.
And it has a great meaning as well. Commensality is the act of people eating together, and the social benefits of that, obviously, but also the personal and the mental health benefits of that. And I think we didn't know how valuable that was until it was taken away from us in 2020, March the 23rd, and then where we couldn't get together, we couldn't share things, and we had the Christmases and so we couldn't get family together. And that thing of being around a table, sharing food, relaxing with loved ones and people, you share friends and whatever, strangers, is a really key thing. And it's something that, if I go back to my doctorate research, it was the thing, the social glue that one had called it, that they do food education for, because it has that ability to get parents and your community into the school because everybody has that connection with food. If you try and get parents into school to do maths or grammar or punctuation, you'll get a few, you'll get many, because they may have that hang up from when they were a child and think, I wasn't very good at that, I don't really want to go into it. Start mentioning food, people want to come in, and then you've got them. So it's an underplayed thing, but it's a really, really important aspect of food in general and food in life. It's one of the joys of it, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. Wonderful. Thank you very much. That's brilliant. Another question for me is, obviously you are the head teacher of your school, so it's coming from you, all of this. So for the teachers that aren't on the SLT who are with us today, how can they get their SLT, their head teacher, their governors on board with this sort of thing?
I think, the new inspector. Let's go down to Ofsted, shall we? Because that's when school leaders' ears prick up. The inspection framework, the current one in its current iteration, is about creating a curriculum that's relevant to your children and relevant to your communities. we all know what the childhood obesity figures are like. We all know what the health figures are like. You know, childhood obesity for reception children in year 6 went up 4% in the last 2 years. You know, it's 25% of children are overweight or obese, and that has a massive impact on their life, because it's very difficult to get out of that cycle, as Henry Dimbleby called it, the junk food cycle. To go at it from that angle, I think is a really good one, because I've seen it and I've heard it anecdotally from schools that do food education, have had inspections in the current format, and said that inspectors get it, hit them in the heart. Just say to them, if they've got kids, what's the most important thing for their children? They're going to say it's their health, not whether they know about frontal adverbials. So I think it's looking at adapting your curriculum, which is what we all need to be doing, and making relevant for our children. What is more relevant than their health and the problems we've got with it? So I think it's coming at it. I do, you know, if you're a teacher and trying to do that, and some heads are, you know, ingrained with, you know, previous government dictate about, you know, maths and English and all that type of thing, percentages here and league tables there, I think it might be quite a tough challenge, but it's something that we have to do. It goes at the core values of what schools are about. Their core purpose is to make children's lives better, and that just doesn't happen all the time with maths and English. It's about a wider impact of that, and food has that ability to hit all of those points: your social, your personal, your physical health, your mental health, your joy, your pleasure. So I think it's that persuasion, it's you know, trying to get to their hearts rather than their heads with that one.
Great, thank you. That'd be really useful for teachers, I think. I've got one question to ask you, but I'll come back to mine because it may be asked from other teachers. So Claire, are there any questions?
Yes, I've got a couple of questions for you, Jason. So I'm just wondering really how you go about organising across the school so that all the pupils are engaged. So I was just thinking about your, say, food waste activity, where some of the children are weighing the food, and outside where some of them are harvesting, and presumably all the children don't get to do each of those things. So how do you go about organising and planning so everyone's kind of involved?
Rotas are good. Okay, so they do. You know, we have a system with our PPA time, planning and preparation and assessment time. We have a part of that on a rolling program that children go out and they're starting to, you know, they're out in the gardens, because you can justify that is great for their mental health being outside. We knew that during the pandemic. When people limited that, that's when we saw the mental health issues rise, when people weren't allowed to go outside. So we justify it in that. It's looking at different type areas of the school, whether, you know, it's year 3, 4s that do the weighing and the measuring, and they've got a rota for that. So each child gets to have a chance of doing that. It's making sure that you're embedding the food curriculum. You know, that wheel that we saw at the beginning of my presentation is part of the weekly teaching and learning. It's part of our ethos. It's part of what we do as a school. If you're not into it, then don't come to the school, don't apply to come to the school. People know that. But it's also training, it's also CPD for staff, and you know, it's not just saying I want you to do it and off you go and good luck with it. It is making sure that they have the skills and the knowledge to do that. And you can do a lot of that in-house, but also looking at outside agencies to come and support that as well.
I've got another one as well. There were a couple more too. I'm not sure if we're going to have time, but I will ask this one. We've got a colleague who wants to put together a course for year 7 about teaching taste, and is interested in the sort of Nordic principles that you mentioned before. Just wondering if they can find out for ideas, resources, contacts, or who to perhaps speak to or find out more about that.
Well, the Nordic principles, Finland have Finland have sensory-based food education as part of their curriculum. We've all been told through PISA results that Finland is the mecca of education. We all should be following that. Well, they've been doing this for 15 years. It's one of the pillars of their whole education system is food. You know, they have free school meals from when children enter school to when they leave at 18, and they see the impact that has. The overarching organisation that Tasted sit under is a group called the SAPRA organisation, and that's where we got our principles from. But you've got to, well, you can start at year 7, that's great, and we have seen, we've done lessons in secondary schools as well with that, but I think it's that engagement, it's that very simple, you know, everything we know in life is gathered through our senses. We either see it, we taste it, we hear it, we feel it, you know, we smell it, all everything that we know is gathered through our senses. So we go down to the very basics of it. If you can do lessons in that and children engaging it, and not the threat, not the emotional attachment that sometimes happens with it, that's where the Swedes and the Norwegians and the Finns in particular are years ahead of us, because they've embedded it, you know, in the 90s with this type of thing, and saw the value of it. And it may be also linked to the fact that they're always top of the charts of the nicest places to live as well, I think.
Thank you.
Great. Is there one more, Claire? Or
well, there's a couple more, but yeah, I'll do one more. So Michelle was asking if you have good links with your local secondary schools, and whether they continue on with the kind of growing and the things you do, and if you don't, whether you invite your year sixes back to have a look how the growing projects are going.
Yeah, we do. And a really nice thing I went to about 4 weeks ago with the secondary school, the food tech teacher from the local secondary school, who I met about 5 or 6 years ago, came and had a look around the school, and has now just opened up his new garden. So I was invited to the opening of that. And speaking to the new head there, she got it because Daniel had really, you know, promoted it and supported it, and just needed a little bit of a guidance in very small areas. He was so enthusiastic about it. It doesn't happen all the time, you know. I'm not saying it happens, you know. It depends on the individual there, and I know, you know, the funding and the timetabling for food technology, I think that's what's called a secondary, is very small, and you know, the choice you got there. But yeah, I think with the enthusiasm that children get because they've been embedded, had it at our school, and they go forward, and parents want that as well, and they push that forward. Our parents saying we want the same offer that they have at our school in their secondary school, and that parent pressure there. But yeah, it can work, but sometimes it doesn't. I'm not saying it's 100%, unfortunately.
Great. Thank you. Right, one final thing just to wrap up then. So obviously you've talked about a lot of different things that happen in your school and that teachers could do, and obviously I've given some suggestions as well. So there's quite a lot to think of. Is there one top tip that you could suggest around food waste?
Well, those are top tips. I do, as I opened up with, it is, I do think this, as I said, the Trojan horse of sustainability, get it in through that avenue, I think will, and make it part and parcel, because it's something that they'll encounter every day. Okay, something they can make a really big impact on. If you look at other areas of climate change, rising sea levels and you know, oil prices and fracking and all these type of things, yes, we're knowledgeable about that, but there's not much we can do about it within a school. Food waste is probably the thing that we can and make a really big impact on. You can switch certain lights off, you can do the photocopier off over at night time and switch your computers off. Makes a little bit of an impact, and children know about that. But here's a really great project that children get. You know, this project we've been doing has been running since September. And they're not bored of it, and they keep going with it, and they keep adding bits to it. They were presenting at the Lincolnshire show last week for 2 days on this, and I won an award for it, which was lovely for them and then for the school. But it is something that has a lot of room to grow, and children can see that immediate impact in it. And we go back to what schools are tasked to do currently, thankfully, is create a curriculum that's relevant for their children. Well, sustainability, as we said, and health and climate change is so relevant to our children, and they can make that difference to it. I'm just going back to, there's one here about size of my school. It's 300 children, and it's in Lincolnshire. So just answering that person there, Martha, I think it was.
Right. Okay. All right. Well, that's brilliant, Jason. Thank you so much for giving us your time. I really appreciate it.